welcome back to the LA Reads podcast. We're your hosts, Abby
and Leighton, and I don't know what episode this is, but it is Throne of Glass Part 2.
It's 7. It's episode 7.
Episode 7.
And this is SJM Part 2 of Throne of Glass, and this one's about to be so good.
Yeah, it's gonna be incredibly chaotic. I was telling Abby, I have like 8 pages of notes.
Yeah, and also, we're very passionate about a lot of the things that are in these next couple of books. So this is about to be tragic. We are going to jump into what we read this week. However, this is just a fair warning. This podcast will be spoilers for all of Throne of Glass. So if you have not read all of Throne of Glass, this is your warning. Come back when you have finished all the episodes. Wow. Finished all the books.
I was rolling with it. Yeah, I was like, yeah.
Yeah, we're having a great day. And come back when you have finished all of them, because this is your one warning. We will be spoiling. We will not be holding back.
Yes.
And you are not safe here if you have not finished Throne of Glass. So,
yes.
Anyways, but without further ado, Leighton, what did you read this week?
I was just telling you that I should be single-minded and be only reading Throne of Glass, but that is absolutely not what I did this week. So, first of all, I read Twisted Lies, because everybody on TikTok, after we posted our Twisted ranking video, told me I put Twisted Lies at the bottom of everything, and they were like, you are wrong. You need to reread it.
And I agreed.
Yeah, and I was swayed. So I did reread it. I liked it a lot.
Oh,
a lot
really?
more than I thought.
Okay.
Am I changing its position? No.
You psychopath.
It's so good, but comparatively, Josh Chen, I love him.
So freaking crazy to me.
He will never be beat. So
love that for you.
And then randomly, I picked up a Rebecca Yarros book. That's not Fourth Wing.
Which one?
I read both Girl in Love and Boy in Love.
Oh.
Which is book 1 and book 2.
Okay.
And I was surprised at how much I liked it, because I finished both of them, and I thought it was about maybe a 3.25 star read. It was good. I didn't have very many thoughts on it. But the more it's kind of brewed in my head and I've sat with it, I think I kind of like it a lot.
We love when that happens. It either goes one of two ways when you read books. Either you sit after and it brews in your head and you decide that you like it less, or it brews in your head for a while and then you're like, wait, this was so good.
Yeah, I thought she did such a good job making it. I mean, it's a romance book, but there was a decent amount of smut in it, but it was all very tasteful.
Yeah.
And very romantic, and my heart was like really feeling for the characters. And so the more I sit with it, I'm like, wow, I feel so bad for them.
Wait, that's amazing.
Yeah, so it was pretty good. But then on top of that, I just did my brush ups of every single Throne of Glass book.
Go you. I really didn't read anything this week. I read Queen of Shadows, so I read that entirely, and that was great. We'll get into it. And then we'll also get into this. And then I tried to read Empire of Storms and Tower of Dawn, and that did not go well for me for some reason. I was just not feeling it. The moment that I feel like I have to read a book, it usually doesn't end very well for me.
Yeah.
So that was kind of where we're at. I'm honestly kind of relieved for this to be over, because I am not going to be rereading ACOTAR, because I just barely reread them, and I already have a lot of notes from when I reread them like a month ago. So I can go back to reading whatever I want, and I'm very excited. So
it feels very reminiscent of school. Sometimes you remember book reports.
Yes.
And it's like all of a sudden when you have to read for school, you're like, I hate it. I can't do this.
I was literally sitting with a couple of my friends today, and I was trying to come up with notes and stuff for this episode, and I was like, wow, this is feeling like a book report. I'm trying to make notes and come up with what I'm gonna say. I'm like, wow, this is feeling book report-esque.
Yes, but we did it. We're gonna record it today, and then we'll move on.
Okay, anything else?
No, I think we're ready to jump right into the madness.
Oh, I'm so excited! This is about to be absolutely chaotic. So, last warning, and this is spoiler warning for all of Throne of Glass. You have been warned. We are going to start with Queen of Shadows, because we talked about Air of Fire last time. So, Queen of Shadows. Would you like to start? Do you have thoughts?
Yeah, I will first just give my general thoughts.
Okay.
Because we recently posted on our TikTok a ranking of all the Throne of Glass books, and I ranked Queen of Shadows below Air of Fire and Crown of Midnight and Empire of Storms. I think it was number 4 or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Which is, I feel like, a kind of unpopular opinion because a lot of people will say Queen of Shadows is their favorite. And I don't know what it was about this reread. Arguably, I don't think that much happened.
Okay. So Queen of Shadows, I had ranked above Air of Fire when we did it. I was like, Queen of Shadows is like so close to a 5-star to me. I absolutely love it. I reread the whole thing again, and I was actually really shocked, and I agree. I feel like I didn't there's not as much as I thought that when it happened. Literally, I think the only reason why I loved the book so much the first, 2 times I read it was literally because of the scene where Rowan comes back and they're in the alleyway and she runs to Rowan.
Yes.
Ah! And then just the end sequence. Because the end sequence of them trying to blow up the tower and her getting her magic back and her and Dorian, like that whole scene, and then finding out that the king isn't the bad guy was like the biggest plot turner for me. I had like never saw that coming. So I think that because of that, I was like, oh, this book is fantastic. But all the things in between there, besides Arabin dying, I was like, there's not a lot that happens.
No, I think you can summarize pretty much the entire first half of the book as just Kale and Aelin just bickering.
No, truly.
The whole book. And then, I agree, it picks up, I feel like as soon as we have the Adian rescue sequence, that's when it starts to get really good.
Yeah.
So maybe I would say the last, I don't know, 250 pages of Queen of Shadows are it. But everything before that, I mean, I still liked it, but was not as good as I remember it being.
Yeah, and I mean, there's definitely good points. And also, I think Queen of Shadows is the first time that we actually see, like, in the fullest extent, Aelin kind of being this, like, scheming, plotting person. Like, that's the first time that we see, like, her actually come up with, like, such a big plot and it come together in the end. Because you see her, like, going to the bank and, like, you see all those things that happen with Arabin and you're like, whoa.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So that's, like, I think the first time that you see her kind of be that, like, smart plotting person. But other than that, yeah, there was not a lot. Also, I will say, I do like Kale, and I think he has a great character arc. However, I can understand why people don't like him, because he honestly was pissing me off so bad in Queen of Shadows.
I will, if you've listened to our podcast before, you know I always come to the Kale defense. However, I think he's in the wrong, but I also think he's partially in the right, because obviously, like I said before, the entire first half is them bickering, and one of their main points of conflict is what to do with Dorian, right?
Yeah.
And Aelin is team kill him.
Yeah.
And Kale is the one saying, absolutely under no circumstances are we even going to try and kill him.
Yeah.
Right? So technically, I love Dorian in the rest of the series. That is all due to Kale. We have him to thank for the fact that he's alive.
Well, but to be fair, Kale at some point when they go and save Lysandra,
true,
he does have his moment where he's like, "Oh, we have to kill him," and you're like, "Wait."
They do kind of flip.
Yeah, I was telling Leighton this that there were moments where I feel like I've come up with a lot of like comparisons to some of these characters, but as I was rereading, I was like, Kale is like the Aaron Burr of Throne of Glass, because in Hamilton, listen, hear me out here. Hear me out with my odd theory. My odd thought is that in Hamilton, they always say that like Aaron Burr was always like, if you stand for nothing, Burr, what do you fall for? And like he just could never decide like which side he like wanted to like choose, or like what do you actually believe, or like what do you actually like stand for? And that's how I felt Kale was in Queen of Shadows. It was like his moment to like be like, is it Dorian? Is it Otterlin? Is he gonna support Aelin? Like what does he stand for? And like you literally, I think Queen of Shadows, that's why we don't like him so much, is because he's trying to figure that out. And we just want him to be Team Aelin all the way, and he's not.
Which, once again, coming to the Kale defense, I think a lot of people don't like his character because he is not very Aelin-centric.
Yes.
A lot of the times in series, the main character, everybody revolves around them. All their opinions, all their thoughts, all their feelings. And a lot of the times, they're either in direct conflict of those beliefs, making them, you know, our bad guy. Yeah. Or they directly agree, and he's more of this random third party where he's like not in conflict with her necessarily.
Yeah.
But he doesn't agree with her, so he almost has his own like I would refer to it as like solar system of like he's just doing his own thing.
Yes.
Which makes him this really odd piece and incredibly frustrating at times because he is just not getting on the page.
Well, and I think that's also why people don't like him is just like you said, like he challenges what Aelin is saying. Like literally in my notes, I was like, I feel because we see Kale fear magic and is disgusted by it. He's like, what are the checks on your kind? You know, like what is the boundaries gonna be? And I even said in my notes, I was like, I don't feel like Kale likes people being inferior to him. Like he doesn't like the idea of not being the most powerful or strong. Like I think he definitely had a lot of growing up to do, and I think that he didn't like that Aelin was more powerful and strong than he was, and I think that scared him. And so you see him push back, and I think that's why people are like, oh, I hate him, because he's not like, he's pushing back against Aelin to a point where I think he might even very much not like her, like kind of hates what she stands for. And I'm like, anyway, so I just think he definitely had a lot of growing up to do, which is honestly I could see why Sarah J. Maas decided to write an entire book about him, because the man needed to grow up. He did.
Well, once again, to argue, I think he kind of had a valid point in the sense that he wasn't 100% Team Aelin, because in his head, he's thinking, you know, we're going to go from like one kind of king dictator just to another. And his only experience with magic is kind of the Vogue and, you know, Dorian's dad, the king, and everything like that. So releasing magic and everything, I see his apprehension being like, maybe we should step back and think about it. Yeah. Because we know Aelin's incredibly powerful, and she could pretty much absolutely ruin anybody that she wants.
Yes.
And he's like, I don't know if I want to give her that power, because yes, I think she's better than him, but at the same time, magic is such an unknown.
Yeah.
That I just don't know. Which, once again, then he's in conflict with Aelin, and me as a reader who loves her, I'm like, get with it.
Yes,
exactly.
Let her
rule.
Yes. But also, you'll be shocked to hear, sorry, this is such a turn, but Queen of Shadows, I have said before that I was not into the witches. Yes. I was not vibing with the witches. But rereading it, I was kind of vibing with the witches.
I do kind of love their entire dynamic.
I do too.
I think it just, when you don't know, like when you're reading it for the first time and you don't know their importance later in the book.
That's fair.
You're just it's this random offshoot that you're saying, why are we taking time away from Rowan and Selena and wasting it on these people that I know nothing about? Like,
yes.
They're not even relevant.
I had never been emotionally attached to them, and then rereading Queen of Shadows, I was like, oh, kind of loved
the Manon Astrid dynamic.
Yes.
And I can't speak whether it's only in Queen of Shadows. I know it continues in Empire of Storms and everything like that, but is so freaking good.
It's so good. Also, okay, this is so interesting because I had this thought. So, you know how in Queen of Shadows there's this scene where they go and save Lysandra, and then Manon and the 13 like chase them to that temple, and Aelin and Manon fight. You know the scene?
Oh,
yes, that scene.
Yeah.
So, Rowan gets shot by an arrow, and Aelin like freaks out. We find out later in Empire of Storms that was the moment she realized that he was her mate.
Yes.
Was like by the way that she reacted and like things like that. And then she says in Queen of Shadows that the reason why she didn't kill Manon was because Astrid was like screamed for Manon the same way that she did for Rowan.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that Astrid and Manon are mates by any means, but the more I've read SJM's books, the more I've realized that we literally know nothing about the mating bond. Like, we know very little about it.
Yeah.
And so I thought it was so interesting. I was like, it brought up this question in my head I was like, can mates be more than just like romantic,
more
relationships?
Like platonic.
Yeah. Because Astrid and Manon, I feel like you see that. Like, in the way that Aelin reacted in that moment to Rowan was the same way that Astrid reacted to Manon. I don't know.
Well, it's also, I mean, obviously we won't go into Crescent City and everything in this episode, but the Bryce-Danica dynamic is another situation that I think closely mirrors how Astrid and Manon feel about each other. I mean, granted, Astrid and Manon, I'm pretty sure, are cousins. So let's put that out there.
Oh, yes.
But
I'm not saying, that's what I'm saying, like, in not a romantic way at all, in any sort of the term, but just like, there's so much I feel like we don't know about the mating bond. And I was also thinking about this because, like, Rowan and Aelin, we see that their mating bond is like so strong to the point of like they can see the bond, like, and they talk about how like at the end of Empire of Storm specifically, Rowan's like tries to like talk down the mating bond and stuff. Whereas I feel like when in other books, some of the other couples, like in Crescent City, they kind of chose their mate, and I feel like you don't see that same like level of connection. So then it made me think, I was like, is the mating bond, is there like a version of like a choice mating bond, like a choice mating bond, and like a like destined mating bond, and can you follow either one, just one not as strong as the other? You know what I'm trying to say?
And I really think this is going to be explored. We'll talk about this in our ACOTAR episode, but we know there's a new ACOTAR book coming out soon that follows Elaine. You know, I think her whole situation is a great time and place to explore what the mating bond actually is. Because if that's the case, what you said, things might get a little crazy in that book.
But I never thought about that until I was rereading Empire of Storms today, and I was like, huh.
Also, can we talk about, I had this, because I have a whole section in my notes dedicated to Aelin and Rowan's relationship, specifically in Empire of Storms, but I did make a note that she does say in Queen of Shadows, she says they were going to shoot my ... Rowan through... I didn't even finish that. Through the heart. Through the something, because in my notes I said through the... Didn't finish quote. Whatever. But she literally was going to say mate.
Yes, I noticed that too.
Maybe I should just keep it to Rowan for now.
Okay, this is something that's so interesting. I thought about this too, was that we see, you know, she gives us little bits and pieces here and there as the reader, like, you know, that she's feeling about Rowan. We see it in Heir of Fire a little bit, and then like in Queen of Shadows, she's like, oh, I miss him, but I'm not going to allow myself to think that, whatever. And in the book, it is very consistent that Aelin doesn't tell people her plans. That she doesn't tell people her feelings, and she doesn't tell people her plans until it like has already unfolded or has happened. And I was laughing because I was like, SJM is so sly, so conniving, because she does the same thing with the reader. Because Aelin has all these feelings for Rowan, and she did the same thing to us as she does in the characters in the book, is like, she like hints at it but doesn't actually tell us. Yeah. And you're like, wait.
Well, I also have it in my notes, and I believe this is in Empire of Storms, but you know, I should take better notes because this is so incredibly vague. But there's a point where Aelin's saying goodbye to Rowan, and she says like, quote, one word came to mind. Yes. And it's like, again, the word is mate. We know this, but she's just not saying it out loud yet.
Yes. So freaking good. I'm excited to see more of the mating bond explored. But I forgot, I reread Empire of Storms those last couple chapters today.
Heartbreaking.
It is. Yes. It truly is so heartbreaking. And I kind of forgot.
It's actually so bad because it puts me into like a coma of sorts where I am just unable to do anything for so long because I'm just in my feels.
Yes. So good. Also, I had like two final thoughts about Queen of Shadows. Because I kind of didn't notice this, but Kale at the end of Queen of Shadows calls Aelin's magic beautiful. So you do start to see him like have a character arc moment by the end of Queen of Shadows where he starts to warm up to the idea of magic, which I love. And then also I loved Dorian's character because we obviously see that he gets free of the vault, whatever. But I loved that it wasn't just like oh, it's all fine, I'm good, ready to be king now. Like, he's very much like hesitant about falling into the role of king, and like it doesn't naturally come to him. And I feel like the way that it was portrayed is like way more like realistic as to like what it would actually be like, instead of being like, oh, it's fine, I'm free now, all is well, and you're like, wow, how is it well? Because I would not be well.
Well, it's also really interesting his relationship with his father, because we find out at the end of Queen of Shadows that his father was actually possessed this entire time. And with that, he, even knowing this, doesn't necessarily forgive his father right out of the gate. He's not saying, oh, he was possessed, I forgive him, I love my father. He still has this really conflicted relationship because it's almost like that's all he's ever known at that point, which I like, because I feel like that's more realistic as well, because just knowing that information doesn't necessarily change any of your memories with him. So it would feel out of pocket to just be like, oh, okay.
Yes. Also, speaking of Dorian, I literally will not allow myself to think that he is not immortal. So he better be like half Volk or something, because the idea of him not being able to live forever and him and Manon not being together literally makes me depressed inside.
Also, this may be a really big jump, but
that's okay.
It happens in Kingdom of Ash, but it's about Dorian and what we're talking about.
Okay.
But we find out too, which this just broke my heart, that Dorian's dad, his name.
Oh, like, yes.
Let me find it in my notes, because I was very articulate.
This is probably one of the one of my favorite parts of Kingdom of Ash. So you were talking about Dorian in Kingdom of Ash.
Yes, and I won't say it all right now, because I definitely want to come back, because this is when they're forging the lock in Kingdom of Ash.
Yeah.
Which I think we just need to debrief on that whole situation.
We'll debrief in a moment.
But obviously we know at one point in time, Dorian's dad steps in and he's able to take Dorian's spot.
Mm-hmm.
And he's able to do it because it's, quote, nameless is the price. And then he looks and says, I'm nameless. And I thought to myself, I was like, what do you mean? We definitely know who you are. And then I realized we've been referring to him as, quote, the king the entire time. I was like, I don't know what your name is.
Oh my gosh. It was like the biggest plot twist to me when I first read the book ever. I literally was baffled.
Yeah.
Dumbfounded.
Well, and then we find out later that the whole reason Dorian's name is Dorian is because his dad was possessed, and the only time he ever remembered his name is the first time he laid eyes on baby Dorian, and he remembered it and named him after himself. And then immediately forgot his own name.
It's so good!
Daddy Dorian? Oh my gosh!
Well, okay, also, this is awful, but I honestly got super lucky when I read the SJM universe, because I really didn't have a lot of things spoiled for me. But when I was in the middle of reading Throne of Glass for the first time, I saw this fan art. Later found out that it was like a canon, like it just was like that's what that's called, right? Like, it's just like a thought. It was like a theory or thought.
Oh,
anyways.
Yeah.
And it was a fan art of Dorian's grave and Manon there. So I thought going into Kingdom of Ash that he died.
Oh.
So I was like waiting for Dorian to die. Come to find out that his dad and that whole sequence happened, I was like, holy crap. Like, that was like the craziest plot twist moment of my life.
Yeah, that pulled on my heartstrings a little bit, because I don't think we have very many situations where we actually feel for his dad, because even when he says he's possessed at the end of Queen of Shadows, it was a big reveal, but I didn't necessarily feel incredibly bad because I didn't know him before.
Yeah.
So my only experience with him was him being awful.
Exactly.
So I'm like, oh, that sucks, but
we love to see the king have a good character arc moment.
Yes, we do.
Also, I had this in my notes because I was, again, baffled by this. Because I didn't know where Dorian's magic came from.
Low-key been asking myself the same thing. I'm like, it's really old, it's really strong.
You want to know who it came from? Elena had raw magic.
Well, okay, now that you say that, that kind of makes sense, because when they're forging the lock, it's a Aelin or Dorian situation, right? So
yes.
We both knew that they came from Elena. But
straight up, I was like, since when did Elena have raw magic?
I didn't know that part of it.
I literally, not that it like really matters really at the end of all of it, but quite literally that means that Elena, who is the daughter of Brannon and also Mala, Firebringer, got the raw magic. So I'm so convinced that Dorian has to become immortal at some point, because you do not have that much magic flowing through your family line.
Yeah.
To not be immortal.
We also know, we find out, obviously, with his dad being possessed, he was conceived while his dad was possessed.
Exactly.
And so he may have some Valg situation going on there, too.
This is my last thought on Dorian, because, well, I have many thoughts about this theory, but... So, Sarah J. Maas, in more recently, because she has been talking about, like, what is next, because she just came out with Crescent City 3, and she said that she's working on another book that would be released after the next ACOTAR book. And she said, I'm not going to say what world it's in, but it's going to be really emotional for me to write. And if there is one character that I feel like never got a completely full rounded story, was Dorian. So I really, really, really hope that the next book that she writes is in Throne of Glass, and it's about Dorian trying to rebuild Otterlin. I want it so bad.
I think people would go feral for a Dorian book.
I would go feral.
Yes.
More realistically, we talked about this last time off camera, but I also thought that maybe the next book would be about Nehemia's brothers, because she mentions that she has brothers, because it's talked about how Eelway was kind of the only place that really knows a lot about like the word gates and the word keys and like, you know, portals to other worlds and things like that. And so I could see her writing something that has to do with that and like them going through their schooling and learning about it, because that would tie into the other books. But yeah, I really hope it's Dorian, because he's the only character that I got to the end and I was like, I still have so many questions.
Well, hand in hand with that, I think Manon could use more exploration as well, and Manon would probably be in that book.
I know.
So I would hope.
I would hope so.
So
I have so many questions.
Okay.
Sorry.
Is that your final thoughts for Queen of Shadows?
Yes.
Okay.
I can feel my passion and just all the things
it's
boiling.
Just slowly rising.
Yes.
Okay.
We're going to be screaming by the end of this.
So, Empire Storms, I have one thing I want to talk about right out of the gate.
Okay.
Because it's relatively towards the beginning
of
everything that happens. But we talked about how amazing the witches are.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they only get better as you progress throughout the book.
So
good. But this one situation, I hope you guys all know what I'm talking about. But Queen Manon, right? Because at this point in time, Astrid is to be executed, right? Yes. She is literally kneeling in front of the 3 matrons. The 13 come. She's ready to get, I'm assuming, her head cut off.
Yes.
She's gonna die, right? And then Manon evokes the right of execution because Astrid is under her, and she says, if anybody's gonna do it, I'm gonna be the one to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So she goes up, she's holding the sword above her head, whatever, and then behind her, the entire 13 gives her the 2-finger salute.
Yes.
Which means Queen of the Witches.
Yeah.
Which is over the matrons.
Mm-hmm.
And they're pretty much saying, you know, we follow you and nobody else. But once again, very reminiscent of Hunger Games and the 3-finger arm in the air whistle situation.
Yes.
I was living for it. And then right before Manon's going to cut off Astrid's head, she also gives her the 2-finger salute. And then looks her dead in the eyes and says, run, and then tries to kill her grandma.
It literally, I loved it because the more I read the witches parts, the more that I was like, it doesn't drag out. That part, like, you know, you have Air of Fire and you have the War Games and them doing that. Queen of Shadows is them, like, kind of discovering what is going on, and Manon starts to, like, you know, question things, being like, am I made or am I born this way? And then, like, literally, that's, like, in the first, like, couple chapters of Empire of Storms. Like, it happens right at the beginning, and you're, like, instantly the witches are, like, we're done. And you're, like, ah!
And it just gets crazier because while she's fighting her grandma, which I'm living for, her grandma just likes to sprinkle some, you know, witch lore halfway through.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, by the way, your iron teeth and your Crochin.
Yes.
Crochin.
I said Crochin.
Yeah, your iron teeth and your Crochin. Oh, and you know how I told you you're the reason your mom is dead because you clawed your way out of her womb?
Wrong.
Yeah, that was a lie. I actually murdered your mom, and on top of that, I also murdered your dad.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my gosh. And then her grandma is apparently very spry in her older age and gets her in the stomach, like pretty much, what do you call it, disembowels her to a certain degree. And then Manon, as she's leaving, she looks at Abraxos and says, take me somewhere safe. And you know where she ends up? With Dorian! I was like, there's
nothing better than that moment. It's so cute when Manon realizes it too. Be like, I asked him to take me somewhere safe and he brought me here. And she's like, you were like, you can tell she's realizing, and she's like, frick. Because I also thought this, because we've talked about this. We talked about this last episode where, like, the Kale and Selena situation happened over, like, the span of a week. Like, sometimes our timelines are a little funky.
Yeah, they're crazy if you think about it.
Dorian and Manon, at this point, have met twice.
I know.
That's a lie. One time he was the Vogue, so when they, like, went and captured Lysandra, and he tells her, I will bleed whatever color I want you to. Iconic.
Bars.
And then the second time is when she flies back to, Otterlyn to try and save him.
Yes.
Which is how they end up in that situation in the first place. They have literally seen each other twice.
Yeah.
And you can't tell me that they're not mates or something, because...
Yeah, they're literally made for each other. And to expand upon that situation, you see Manon flying, and if I remember correctly, she falls into the ocean off of X-Bro's back, and Dorian dives in after her, and then we get the whole scene of, like, apparently Dorian gets a backbone when he's around Manon, and he turns into this shameless flirt.
He does
around her, and he uses his shadow hands, everybody, to literally hold her down, tease her, and then say, maybe next time, witchling. Excuse me? Who is this man? Because Dorian from Throne of Glass, Crown of Midnight, etc. is not even comparable to where he is now.
I think the one Dorian prior to being possessed by a Vogue was happy, arrogant Playboy Dorian. And after, this is dark, arrogant Playboy King Dorian.
Yes, King Dorian. I said it once, I'll say it again. Dorian is for the dark romance girls. He's so dark romance coded. Obsessed.
I love him so much. Obviously, we love him. Do you have anything else to add to the witches / Dorian? Because I have a thought.
No. My next one, completely different thought.
Because I love Dorian. You want to know who I absolutely despise, however?
Oh, no.
Aedion. That man could go die off a freaking cliff.
Okay, Aedion, explicitly in Kingdom of Ash, is awful to Lysandra.
He is awful in all of them. As I was rereading, he is awful. Because all this man does, is he is so cryptic and so, like, second guesses everything that everyone does. He literally is, like, the biggest, like, pessimistic person I've ever seen in my entire life, and he pisses me off so much. He doesn't trust Aelin. He doesn't trust anyone. He questions everything that Aelin does in Queen of Shadows and Empire of Storms, and he pisses me off so bad.
Okay, in Aedion's defense, he has no valid reason to be upset right now. However, we'll talk about it in a little bit, but the ending of Empire of Storms in the plan that was concocted without his consent, okay, I understand how that could be a little bit frustrating with the whole, he's supposed to be with Lysandra and have their kids and then let Rowan raise them, etc.
Fine.
So I accept that you're supposed to be a little upset, but he takes it so out of proportion, and he's not even upset. He's, like, cruel for a while.
So mean to Lysandra, and I'm like, I thought we've already established that, like, you guys can't say no to Aelin. Like, we've already established that you guys kind of do everything that Aelin says, so why are you getting mad at Lysandra for following her queen? Your queen.
And that's what she literally says. She's like, what do you expect me to do? She is my queen, and she asked me to do this, and it's not easy on her part either. She's essentially killing herself, because Lysandra would cease to exist.
Exactly. And then... also, the way that he acts when he finds out about Gavriel, and he's literally such a douche to Gavriel when he finds out that he's his dad.
Yeah.
Oh,
like,
I was so annoyed. Yeah. I'm like, he didn't even know you existed. Why are you so mad at him?
Yes.
Gavriel literally did nothing. Anyways, I literally cannot handle this man. I think he is literally so annoying. And he just got worse the more I was reading. I have to skip his chapters. I literally could not hang.
I agree. I'm
sweating now.
He was difficult at times. Many times.
Anyways. Okay. That's all with that one. I'm going to put that one to rest now.
I think the next thing we need to cover, it's so hard because it's kind of a span of chapters, but chapter 27 to chapter 38, the chef's kiss of Empire Storms. If you don't know what I'm talking about,
you're gonna
chapter
summarize.
27 is Rolf's office, where she appears as Selena, and chapter 38 is the beach scene. And everything that comes in between.
I just read that today.
Yes. First things first, chapter 27. Personally, you guys will have to let us know. I like chapter 27 more than I like chapter 38.
Oh, I love chapter 27. Sometimes when I'm having a bad day, I'll just flip that sequence open and read it because I think it is the funniest thing ever.
It's incredible. As much as I love seeing Rowan and Aelin get together in chapter 38, which is the beach scene.
Yes.
The way she embodies Selena in Rolf's office in chapter 27 is absolutely unmatched.
It's so good. And also, I absolutely love that was from Dorian's perspective because in his perspective, he's like, Aelin is insane.
Yeah.
She is absolutely crazy. And you see him have that thought multiple times throughout that sequence, those chapters. He says it multiple times where he's like, Aelin is crazy. But by the end of that sequence, he's like, but maybe I need to be that way too. Like, you can tell that he looks up to Aelin literally just because of all those chapters. And I'm like, wow, it's my favorite chapter of all time.
I love their relationship just in general because he's so supportive of how, like, crazy she is. I mean,
Yes.
Kale's issue with her was always she's, like, a little bit insane.
Yeah.
But Dorian's, like, cheering her on from the sidelines. It's like, yeah, she's crazy.
Yeah.
But I feel like we need to talk about it briefly because if you don't remember it 100%, she is sitting in Rolf's office and she's pretending to be Selena. And she pretty much, Rowan walks in, and at this point, Rowan knows Aelin, but he is not supposed to know Selena. So she looks him in the eyes and she's like, oh, I don't know you, but I would like to. And then she's like, he says something like, oh, you know, I'm taken, I'm off the market. And she's like, oh, well, she must be smart and beautiful and pretty and the greatest person in the world.
And he's like, all of that and more.
Yes. And she's like, oh, you're so lucky. And she's talking about herself the whole time.
It's so funny. Also, side note from all that, because those are the chapters that we get Gabriel and Fenris joining them. Fenris, favorite person, one of my favorite characters that she has written. I would love to see him again in another book because that's the moment we start to see him, like, see Aelin and he's like, who is this woman?
Yes.
I love her. And they get such a good friendship through that. And literally, I highlighted it. I don't have my Kindle with me, but he calls her Majesty in the first, Majesty after, like, 2 chapters of them, like, interacting with each other. Like, instantly, he's like, she's the one I want to serve even if I can't.
Yeah, and he's under the blood oath.
Yeah, he's under the blood oath at this time, and he's there to kill Lorcan. Mm-hmm. But, like, he instantly, without being able to say it, he was like in on Aelin and was like, I trust her wholeheartedly. And you're like, ah.
Which I will say I forget, and maybe it's just because I only pick up these books once a year, so things leave my mind, but I love the cadre.
I love them so much.
I forget, they kind of blend when I don't pick up the books for a while into, like, just kind of this figment of, like, the cadre. I forget, like, the individual people and why I like each of them so much. But even I have a whole section that we could talk about later, but I say her name wrong every time. Alide. That's what I was going for. Alide and Lorcan's relationship, I absolutely live for.
I think it's very cute.
It's one of my favorites. I think in this second half of Throne of Glass, 2 of my favorite relationships is obviously Dorian and Manon, but also Alide and Lorcan.
What did Lorcan do is, like, my favorite debate, like, thing that people freak out on TikTok. It's literally so funny. People are like, what did Lorcan do? I need to know what Lorcan did. Yeah.
But moving on to chapter 38, which actually, before we jump into chapter 38, I believe the entire Battle of Skulls Bay lies between those 2 chapters. So it's like a very intense sandwich of chapters of everything that...
The whole sequence of them being in Skulls Bay is so good.
But the one thing I wanted to talk about with the Battle of Skulls Bay is obviously we see Aelin and she's digging into her power and she's using a lot of it and she's taking Rowan's power as well because they're Karanim, whatever it's called.
We'll figure that one out eventually.
Yeah, we're going to get it one of these days, but she's using his power as well. And then she has the word key on. In the amulet of Orant. No.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, around her neck. And Diana is able to use that almost as a gate to possess Aelin. So then she's out of control and Diana is at the helm. Right? So she's going to burn down everything. She's gonna light everybody and everything around her on fire. And the way that this ends is Rowan jumps in front of her. And once again, mates cannot hurt mates. And so we find, well, it's pretty obvious to everyone, I think, except for Rowan at this point, that they're like,
yes,
you know, man,
you're like, idiot.
Get with the picture. But I love that part. But something I also want to know is that when Diana is possessing her, she starts using what Rowan describes as, quote, moonfire and silver flames.
That's so freaking wild.
Yeah, that sounds like a book we may have heard of with a specific person in it, but, you know.
I did not catch on to that, and Sarah J. Maas is just on a whole other level of sprinkling things in, and just, like, I would just like to know what's going on in her brain and how she even does that.
I know. I don't know how she maps this out, and we were talking about it once that I think in an interview she says she doesn't even write it down.
No, she keeps it. Most of it's in her head.
Yeah, she's like, oh, I just have it in my head.
And I remember she said that there was a point where she explained to her editor, she took 2.5 hours to tell her editor all of, like, her plans and, like, how things connected. And I was like, 2.5 hours? It took you 2.5 hours to explain everything? And I was like, and it's all just in your head. That is just so crazy.
Could not be me. I have, I think, short-term memory loss. So even when I think of things and I'm like, oh, that makes sense, ask me an hour later, it's gone.
It's absolutely gone.
But
wow. I love that sequence, though. That and then the end sequence of Maeve taking her is, like, my favorite.
Oh, yeah. And with this sequence as well, she eventually implodes because Rowan steps in front of her. She can't let her fire outwards. So she, essentially implodes and blows up the ship. And everybody goes into the water. And she's so drained. She can't swim at this point, whatever. You know who comes to save her? Fenris. And you know what he does? He winnows away.
That's like his power.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm like, wait a dang minute. I didn't know anybody in the Throne of Glass universe could winnow, but I do know another universe where people can winnow quite frequently.
I know. I literally don't understand. Also, it's so interesting, though, to see that, like, because obviously, like, there's each of the books have different fae in them and, like, things like that, but it's interesting to see, like, the slight tweaks that she makes. Like, the shifting in this book doesn't exist in the other ones. You know what I mean? And then, like, they have powers. ACOTAR kind of has something similar. This one, they are weak to iron. In ACOTAR, they're not. Like, there's just, like, a lot of, like, things that she takes and, like, twists a little bit. I don't know. It's so interesting to me.
But, following this whole debacle, then we get to the chapter 38, because everybody survives. Surprise.
Yes.
And, we get to the beach scene. And the one thing I would like to say about this is, one, it's, like, one of the... she must have gotten in trouble with her editor or something, because it is, like, the only time in the Throne of Glass series where we get several pages of essentially smut.
I'm pretty sure, okay, people say that it's a YA book series. I don't think it is, but I think that maybe she was, like, trying to, because it's her first series, I think she was trying to keep it for a younger audience, and then I think ACOTAR came around and she was like, don't care anymore.
Yeah, because there's been nothing like this. However, I think she did a really good job of keeping it very tasteful.
Yes.
Even though it is several pages of essentially smut, it's not crazy. Even comparatively, I would like to say to even, like, Fourth Wing, it doesn't feel as, I don't know if it's less descriptive or what it is.
I would say that chapter 38 is it's more focused on the emotional side of it than it is the, like, actual, like, description of the physicality. Like, you see, like, they're talking a lot. They're, you know, being like, I am yours. You are mine. Like, I love you too, whatever. And, like, you know, like, it was a lot more emotional than, like, physical.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Which made it, because I enjoyed it a lot.
I love it.
I like it more than I like a lot of other romance scenes in other books.
Same.
And that could partially be just because I'm so invested in the two characters that I'm like, wow, we have been working for this for 2 books now that are both, like, 700 pages.
No, exactly. The build up to it was intense. Like, it was so much. Like, we were waiting for so long for that moment.
Oh, yeah. And then literally right after this, another thing to show how oblivious Rowan is. Obviously, we hear about when people find their mates, the guy usually gets, like, I think, I don't know who quotes it, but like, quote, territorial Fae nonsense.
Yes.
Whatever, where it's like, you cannot look at my mate or else I will rip your head off.
Yes.
And next time he runs into Adian and everybody like that, they all, it says, quote, like, physically stiffen, and they're like, do not move an inch because he is on one.
Yes,
because
he even says he's like usually like males get really like protective at this point, and I'm like, you are such an idiot.
I know, and I'm like, everybody in the room knows that you guys are mates now, and they're like very much aware. Obviously, Aylin's known since at least Queen of Shadows, if not even before then.
Yeah, Queen of Shadows.
And you're the only one in the dark. And granted, the whole situation with Lyra, like, I'm so awful.
You're okay.
Lyra is holding him back.
For sure.
Which is like a mental hurdle that he has to get over, but still, I'm like, the cues are there.
There were so many cues. Yeah, the whole situation with Lyra, though, like, obviously that's a character we didn't meet because she's dead before we actually meet Rowan, but I do feel bad. You're like, it's kind of sad. Like, when you think about it, it's like, oh, you were never actually his real mate, and, like, you know what I mean? Like, it is kind of sad.
Well, it's so heartbreaking, and I feel so bad for Aylin, and she's so selfless and amazing because she's known for so long, and the only reason she hasn't said anything is because she doesn't want to invalidate Rowan's feelings for Lyra.
Yeah, and didn't want to, like, push him too far.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah, it's so good.
Yeah, it is very crazy.
Hi, so because we are stupid, I didn't plug something in after we took a break, and this next, 10 minutes of this episode, was recorded from the internal mic in my, camera, so it might sound a little bit different, but the content was too good not to put in here, so just ignore the poor quality content, and, it'll be back in 10 minutes. Okay, bye. Did you have any other thoughts about Empire of Storms?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I have two more thoughts, but they're both kind of brief.
Okay.
The first one is something that took me a lot by surprise, because when I think about my favorite moments of Empire Storms, this does not come to mind. It's not even in my top 3 or 4 I can even think of.
Okay.
However, rereading it, loved it. Which is Alid and Aylin's reunion. Specifically, I listened to this short section, the audiobook version of it, because it's trending on TikTok and everything right now. My heart shattered.
Wait, spark my memory really fast, because I think I skipped over that part because I was trying to read fast today. What does she say? That's the moment when Aylin's like tells her about her mom, right?
Yeah. She's pretty much, if I remember correctly, thanks Alid because her mom obviously died.
Yeah.
For her to make it so Aylin could survive, and
yes.
Alid pretty much is proud of the situation. She's totally understand why my mom did that. I'm 100% in with you, and I really love their relationship because the other really strong female relationship that Aylin has is Lysandra.
Mm-hmm.
However, it's so different than her relationship with Alid, because Alid will walk behind Aylin into darkness. She's like, I will follow you anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
I trust you till the day I die. And even later, when she loses her magic in Kingdom of Ash, everybody starts to question, oh, she doesn't have all of her magic. Should she really be the queen? And Alid's like, no, I wanted you to be the queen because you're you, not because of your magic or what you could do necessarily.
I love her. Also, first off, side note about Alid, I forgot that she was part witch situation.
Oh, yeah,
totally forgot about that until I was reading Air of Fire, Queen of Shadows when she's introduced, and I was like, huh, I forgot about that. But, and I also forgot, and I love this part in Empire of Storms after Aylin is taken, and the 13 come onto the beach, so Manon and Alid go to the 13. Yeah. Astrid, puts her arm around Alid, and, she's very much, welcomed into the 13. I was like, they just, there are two things that Manon loves in this world, and it is Abraxas and Alid. And the fact that she just kind of adopted Alid into the witches and into the 13 is so cute, and, literally the best, dynamic. And I think that part was, why I started to really like the witches. I was like, I forgot about this, and it was so good.
Yeah, it really is kind of like a found family dynamic
yes,
that they have
it
with her.
truly is.
Because in Queen of Shadows, they find out that she has, it's witch blood, but is it iron teeth? I believe it's iron teeth blood
in
her. And Manon really puts her foot down right in that moment, and she's like, choose. If you want me to protect you, I will. But then you're one of mine.
Yeah.
And it's like almost like that possessive, like, you're mine.
Yes.
And you follow me. And I'm like, okay, I mean, if Manon told me that, I would follow her too.
No. But speaking of Lysandra and Elaine, wow. Aelin's, their names are all too similar. Yeah. Goodness. Their relationship, I had this thought. I told you I had a lot of comparisons.
Yes.
To things. But when I was rereading everything, I didn't also realize how quickly Lysandra kind of jumped in on, like, Aelin's scheming.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that we never really see behind the scenes of, like, if she ever questions Aelin, but it almost felt like Lysandra just understood Aelin. Like, she understood her mind really well. And so I saw Aelin and Rowan as, like, McDreamy and Meredith in Grey's Anatomy. Like,
I love that.
They are destined for each other, and we love them.
Yeah.
But Lysandra and Aelin, like, they are each other's person. Like, they just understand each other. They understand their minds. They understand, like, what is needed and what needs to be done, and, like, they just don't question each other. And I was like, they are each other's person.
Well, I almost feel like they are able to be that way because everybody almost has Aelin on a pedestal of protecting her. Obviously, Rowan's, I'm gonna die for you. Adian, I'm gonna die for you. Fenris, I'm gonna die for you. And she's like, oh my gosh, I am just a person. You need to cut the crap and let me do my thing. And I think her and Lysandra feel like they're on very much equal footing because she could tell Lysandra and be like, you know what, I'm kind of planning on sacrificing myself. Mm-hmm. And Lysandra's like, obviously I don't want that to happen, but I understand. I will help you do this. Instead of, if she were to tell anybody else, they would upend the world being like, you absolutely are not going to make this choice.
Well, and I think Lysandra tells Adian at one point, too. I think it's in Queen of Shadows, because she kind of snaps at Adian when, what happens? I don't remember, but there's a point where she snaps at Adian in Queen of Shadows, and she's like, she tells him, like, I knew your queen when she was, 16 years old and, like, hot-headed and immature, like, you know what I mean? And she's like, I've known her for a long time. Like, she's seen her as Selena. She's seen her as all of these roles. And so I feel like she just understands her the best. You know?
Yeah.
Anyways, random thought.
No, I think that's great. I think the last thing I had to say about Empire Storms is just touching base on what they discovered in the witch glass.
Oh, yeah.
When her and Manon are in it. But essentially, it's just Elena did not do her job right? And as punishment, it is, quote, nameless is the price, which essentially they find out that Aelin's going to have to sacrifice herself.
Yeah.
Which, I will touch base more on this on Forging the Lock, but I love Aelin, but she makes me so upset because she threw a fit. A level 7 tantrum when Nehemia went all, I'm the martyr, I'm going to pass away so you don't have to, and this sparks into whatever.
Yeah.
And then she gets this option where it's like, it has to be you or Dorian, and she's like, under no circumstances is it going to be Dorian. I'm going to be the martyr. I'm going to do it. And I'm like, you are doing exactly what you hate Nehemia for.
That's so true. I've never thought about that.
It bothers me so bad because I personally, I don't know if you call it a trope, but like the whole martyr plot line does not resonate with me. I do not like it when books do that.
Well, I kind of forgot about, I guess maybe it just didn't really click in my head the first time I read it, but at the end of Empire of Storms, she goes and gets taken, and she truly had no intention of getting, found. And I, for some reason, that, the depth of that, didn't really click with me until I reread it today, and I was like, oh, wow, she truly was like, this is it for me. That was it. And I was it just for some reason, didn't click in my head that I was like, wow, Aelin truly was like, I am not going to be the queen. She had come to terms with it. She's like, I'm the martyr. And I was like, whoa.
Yeah. And literally, I forgot about this too because I was trying to remember. Obviously, something that's very notable is she gets captured at the end. Mm-hmm. But I was like, why? I can't remember why. And it was to save a lead. Specifically.
Yes.
And I'm like, not trying to be, put people in hierarchy, but you're the queen of Terrasen. Terracin. Guys, I'm so sorry. Terracin and Elite is essentially just a person.
Yes.
As much as I love her, and she's one of my favorite people in this book, like, in everybody else's eyes, they're probably like, you're crazy. Why on earth are you sacrificing yourself for her?
Okay, but you saying that now is making me think, because in Air of Fire, going back a little bit, part of, like, the thing that she had to, like, face, like, the demon she really had to face to be able to accept her power and accept this path that she needed to be on, was accepting the fact that Elite's mom, Marion, died for her. Essentially, like, sacrificed herself, sacrificed, you know, to die and not be the mother of Elite, you know, whatever, so that Aelin could live. And I think that, one, we see, like, her reconcile this even more when she sees Elite and gets an opportunity to, like, tell her, like, hey, this is what your mom told me. She loves you. She's so proud of you, whatever. But I think maybe her protecting Elite in that aspect, like, maybe I feel like she almost feels like this responsibility over Elite, and to be like, your mom sacrificed everything so I could live, so the least I could do is sacrifice to make sure you live, because your mom gave me everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and she's been holding on to Marion's final words this entire time. I don't even think she's vocalized them until she met up with Elite and was like, her final words were, tell my daughter Elite I love her, or something along those lines. So she probably does feel that weight to a certain extent, where she's like, this woman literally died to protect me. Am I going to stand here and watch her daughter die?
Yeah, exactly. Like, and because that's just who Aelin is. Like, she's like, I will do anything to make sure that the people, like, that I love are protected. And I think Elid's goes a little bit further, where she's like, I love her and I want to protect her, but I also feel like she just feels too guilty not to, because of what her mom sacrificed, you know? So, anyways, any other thoughts about Empire of Storms?
Oh my gosh, no. Now we need to take our quick detour into Tower of Dawn.
Well, actually, okay, I wanted to say something about Empire of Storms, just really fast. Granted, I was skimming today. Yesterday and today. But I've always said that, like, Empire of Storms was, like, by far my favorite book in the series. Like, it was, like, very much my favorite. But, again, I feel like rereading it now, it had the same effect almost of, like, of Queen of Shadows, where I was, like, granted, a lot more happens in Empire of Storms, but there's still a lot of, like, lull time that I didn't remember, or, like, I don't know, I just, like, wasn't as interested in the book, and maybe I think I just made me in a weird reading situation this week.
Yeah.
But truly, I was like, why is this, like, so much slower than I remember it being?
Well, something that I don't love about Sarah J. Maas's writing style, which is, this is just totally personal, and I know a lot of people do like it, and it makes a lot of sense logically and chronologically to do it this way. But it's very Game of Thrones coded, where there's 5 or 6 separate storylines, and you're jumping between the storylines. So something will happen with Selene, or I guess Aelin and Rowan, and then we'll jump over to the witches, and then we'll jump over to Dorian. And then we'll jump over to somebody else. And
then all of a sudden you throw in Gabrielle's perspective for a chapter.
Yeah, and it's like, next thing you know, by the time we make it back to this cliffhanger with Aelin and Rowan, it's been 90 pages. And you're like, you made me wait 90 pages? I'm an impatient person, and maybe that's the root of the issue. But I'm like, I prefer it a lot more. And maybe this is why I like first-person perspective a lot, because you usually stick with kind of one character, or you switch between 2 perspectives and that's it.
Yeah.
It's so hard to keep me interested when I feel like I'm going on these really long, like, what do they call it? Like,
sequences. You have to get everyone's perspective over the same thing. Like the Skull Bay's, like, fighting sequence, you got to get everyone's perspective so that you know what everyone was thinking during that time. And you're like, wow, this is dragging out a lot longer than it needs to be.
And I feel like we also, a lot of the time, see every single character come to the same revelation.
Yes.
And I'm like, no, you could just tell us once. And there's one time where Aelin, I think, finds something out. It's either Aelin or Dorian, and then they meet up together. And there's one line that's like, Dorian filled Aelin in on everything he found out.
Yes.
And I'm like, yes, I do not need to hear it a second time.
Nice. Back in business.
Oh, see, I should have questioned things, because I just thought this little soundbar thing wasn't working because it was lagging. No.
Because it was off.
It was off. Okay. Anyways, now jumping into Tower of Dawn. I was going to say, I attempted to do the tandem read because I didn't do it the first time I read this book, and so many people ask me if it's a good option. and I was like, okay, I'll give it a go. My brain could not compute.
The go was not going.
It was not gonna happen for me. I lasted maybe a couple chapters, and then I was like, I cannot do this.
I think the tandem read, though many people recommend it to everyone, I think you have to be the right type of reader. I personally am not that type of reader.
No. And I feel like doing it kind of takes away from what the books are good for. Like, it takes away from Empire of Storms, and I feel like it takes away from Tower of Dawn, and both books are very, very good.
And honestly, like, this sounds bad, but in most people's opinions, I think people really like Empire of Storms. They don't like Tower of Dawn anymore, and I really do think it takes away, like you said, the appeal of Empire of Storms when you intermix it with Tower of Dawn.
Yes.
I think when you keep them separate, I personally like Tower of Dawn, but I know some people don't. So I think it's sometimes good to keep them separate, because then you can at least really enjoy Empire of Storms and then just not like Tower of Dawn as much.
Yes.
But yeah, I personally do not do the tandem read. I read them separately. I've read the series 4 times. I've read both of them separately 4 times and liked it that way perfectly fine.
Yes. I definitely did not get, so I didn't get to reading Tower of Dawn, so I'm a little bit bummed. I've only read it once. But from what I do remember, I definitely don't feel like it deserves the hate that it gives, because truly, like, to be fair, it is not really a plot building book.
No.
Really, when you look at it, literally the only thing that they find out that contributes to the plot is that Maeve is Valg.
Yeah.
And that the Stygian spiders report and, like, follow her.
Yeah.
And then they get them to go to help them in the war. Literally the only thing that actually happens.
Yeah, it's really a book dedicated to let's make Kale a better character.
Yes.
And have him go through his emotional healing journey.
Yes.
Just so he'll be better in Kingdom of Ash.
And also bring Irene, since she is quite literally the savior of this.
Oh my gosh, yes. I think a lot of people, like, we were talking about this prior. You said Tower of Dawn was originally supposed to be a novella.
Oh, yeah.
Correct?
Yeah.
And then Sarah J. Maas just said she started writing the story and it kind of evolved into a whole novel. But I think a lot of people go into it with the novella mindset and think, oh, these are kind of side characters. It's not that important. And then we realize Irene and the healers are the key to ending the war, and Irene is the person who kills Erewhon.
Yes. And she was used all the way in Assassin's Blade.
Oh my gosh.
We had her intertwined in this from the beginning, and that is literally that is like one of the craziest plot sequences I think I've ever read.
Oh, I think there's a part, and correct me if I'm wrong because I skimmed Tower of Dawn for this, but I believe Kale gives her a locket at some point in this novel because she keeps reaching her hand into her pocket to feel Selena's note that she gave her for comfort, and he says, I don't need to know what's in your pocket, but here's this locket, so whatever you keep reaching for, you can wear it around your neck. And it's literally the note.
I forgot about that.
Selena gave her in Assassin's Blade, but she can't even communicate to Kale that it's Selena because she doesn't know Selena's name.
Yes. Well, also, okay, I will say, though, like, I knew throughout the entire book that was the note that Selena gave him. And it was brought up too many times to the point where I was like, are you ever going to freaking figure it out? When is this going to come? I would like this plot point to be over now. But the locket was so cute. I forgot about that.
Yeah, I'm like, wow. First of all, adorable. Second of all, the cyclical writing style of, like, she thought about that in Assassin's Blade to come all the way full circle here.
Yeah.
Chef's kiss.
Literally perfect.
Anyways, with Tower of Dawn, I will say I found the first half of the book kind of laughable because we were trying to really sell this Kale Nezarin ship, and it's not giving.
Not giving.
They are not compatible in the slightest. I know in Queen of Shadows, I caught myself being like, oh, maybe they would kind of be good together.
Yes.
But then we actually get a little bit of a zoom in on their life, and we realize they're awful together.
No, they were so bad, and literally from the beginning, it's like you said earlier, like, Kale and Irene's chemistry from the beginning was off the charts.
Yes.
Sartik and Nezarin's chemistry from the beginning was off the charts, and it's just like, it was obvious that it was not gonna happen between Kale and Nezarin. They literally get to the Southern Continent and literally from the beginning are like, oh, I don't know about this anymore, and you're like,
I know,
what?
Nezrin's incredibly jealous when Kale is spending time with Irene, being healed, because obviously their chemistry is off the charts. She, in turn, is spending time with Sartik, which makes Kale upset. So they're spending time with their respective people that they end up with, but then they're going to bed together.
Yes, but if my significant other was like going and spending his day like with another girl, I'd be like, what are you doing?
Yeah, so I don't know why we were so on board with that, because it kind of persisted throughout a good chunk of this book. And I kept saying, just freaking drop it at this point. Nobody cares.
Also, Irene was just meant for Kale, because I feel like Irene is the first character that just is like, does not put up with Kale's crap and calls him out. She's like, no, you're being kind of the worst. Oh. And like, she calls him out so hard, and I love it. It was exactly what he needed.
Yeah, and we established that Irene's a very selfless human being. She's a very kind human being. She takes a lot of pride in that. However, the first time she meets Kale, she's a witch. And she has an inner monologue where she's like surprised at herself. Yeah. And she's like, wow, I'm being so horrible. I don't know what's wrong with me. We talked about it briefly. I think we determined, it took us a minute to get there. But I think she's originally from Fenharrow. Yes. And that's where all the healers were killed.
Yeah. Or at least that was where her mom was killed and she was a healer.
Yes. So she hates like all of Otterland and everybody in it.
The king and everything.
Obviously he was captain of the guard and now he's Dorian's second in command, hand to the king, whatever that's called. So she like hates him right off the bat and is so mean to him. But I kind of live for it because I'm like, somebody needs to whip Kale into shape.
And so definitely it was super interesting though, because at the end of Queen of Shadows, it was so weird because he's like so hopeful. He's like, I'm going to go and Nezrin's going to go with me and we're going to figure it out and it's going to be great. Literally from the beginning of Tower of Dawn, he's like, essentially like, I hate my life. And I'm like, wow, that was a quick 180, one quick boat ride and you were already like hating your life. And then Irene comes in and she's like, you don't get to act like that.
And the part where she literally, if I remember correctly, she goads him into walking because the last hurdle he kind of has is like a mental hurdle. Yeah. And I think we established that is the fact that he left Dorian. He's not really able to cope with that, which makes it so he in turn can't walk. And so she gets like really pissed at him for no reason. And he's like, what are you talking about, woman? And like stands up to get in her face. And then she's like walking backwards and he's not even realizing that he's coming towards her. And she's like, come on, man, walk.
Yes. You're like, I will egg you on until you are sprinting.
Yeah. I was like, okay, queen.
Yes.
Love that behavior.
Also, the relationship between Sartik and Nezrin 110% slept on.
Oh, yes.
I truly actually thought for a moment when I first read the book that Sartik was going to be the villain because the vibes were like weird. And for some reason, I was like set on like Nezrin and Kale being together because I was like, why would you do all this build up in Queen of Shadows for them to not be together? Yeah. But then once I realized that he wasn't, and just, anyways, Nezrin, I don't remember the exact quote or like chapter but he like confesses his love to her and then he tells her that like the king, because of it, like gave him, like told him that he was gonna be the next whatever
Kagan
or
whatever
it's called. Anyways, like that scene, so good, and I just absolutely love their relationship. And I mentioned earlier, like Aelin and Nezrin's relationship was always really interesting to me because I wouldn't ever say that they were ever friends.
No, definitely not.
But they respected each other and they respected like who they were and like respected like what they did. So I feel like it made sense for Nezrin to be the kind of character that was like, great, I'm going to go help you in this war. Now that's over, I'm going to leave. Like, happy for you guys, but, like, I'm going to go to the Southern Continent because that's really where I belong. And I feel like that was, like, a perfect character arc for her.
Yeah, and I always really liked Aelin and Nezrin's relationship as well because I think the pivotal point for their relationship is in Queen of Shadows. We see Aelin literally holding a sword over Dorian's head and she's going to kill him. Yeah. She's going to murder him right there. And Nezrin's the one that shoots the arrow that knocks the sword out of her hand and makes it so she doesn't kill Dorian. And I truly think if Aelin would have killed Dorian, she never would have been able to come back from that.
No, definitely.
The story would not have ended how it was. She would have lost her soul, lost her humanity, never been able to forgive herself. Yes. And so Nezrin kind of saved her life. Yes. In kind of a sense of the word. And so I think she obviously already respected her, but then she also has this almost essence of gratitude towards her. Yeah. Because she's like, you saved me.
Yes,
And
definitely.
so I thought their relationship was really unique. But with Nezarin and Sartik as well, I believe when he has his first love confession, they're running away from the Stygian spiders.
Yeah.
Stygian spiders, and they get to this part where there's kind of a narrow pathway, and he's too broad that Nezarin's able to slip through, but he's not, and so he's stuck. And then he gets this like resignation of like, I'm gonna die, and I'm okay with that because Nezarin's gonna be okay. Confesses his love to her and says something along the lines of, Nezarin, Philique, I've loved you since I heard the very first story about you. Or something. And I didn't know she was well known. I mean,
I didn't either. I don't know. Okay. Also, let's remind everyone, like, this is like basically like olden times. Like, they are getting messages through letters. How do we hear stories so quickly across continents?
He's not that old.
No.
Right?
What do you remember what he said? Like the story, like does he ever say what stories he heard?
Not that I remember. I just, in my head, it made sense that Sartik would be well known because he's a ruck rider, and a ruck rider is kind of specific to Antarctica and the southern continent. So I'm like, okay, maybe they kind of have a legacy in themselves. However, like, what did Nezarin do? Apparently, I mean, she's
interesting,
great at archery, so maybe that's what made her a little bit notorious.
Interesting.
But I was like, oh, really interesting dynamic there. I had no idea.
Interesting. I love them. And I honestly, Kale and Irene, like, make sense. Like, that was, like, definitely the perfect relationship. But I will say, I'm like, it's going great. And then all of a sudden at the very end, they're like, bam, married, bam, pregnant. And I'm like, wow, we really sped that along very quickly there at the end.
I love it because Dorian especially gives Kale so much crap. And Aelin too, which they're just the iconic trio.
Yes.
Of why did you get your wife pregnant during a war?
Yes.
Like, come on, man. Did you... Obviously, you weren't thinking with your head or the right one.
No, like, definitely. I think it's so funny. Anyways, do you have any other thoughts on not Kingdom of Ash? Tower of Dawn.
The only other thing I can say is just the Ruck Riders. Apparently, when I was reading it through this time, I cannot separate them from the Griffin Riders in Fourth Wing. They're essentially the same thing to me. Wait, why is
that so true?
I don't know why, but the minute they were describing them, I'm like, oh, Griffin Riders. Yes.
Wait, that's hilarious.
But besides that, yeah. I mean, overall, I liked the book. I liked Tower of Dawn. People who look up whether they can skip Tower of Dawn, I would highly not recommend it.
Yeah, I would definitely read it. It's not really, like I said, it's not really big to the plot, but it's definitely, like, such a good book for character development. Like, it is a character developing book.
Yes. Overall, read it.
Now, the moment we've all been waiting for, Kingdom of Ash. We're going to try our best to do this. I have a feeling that my camera's going to overheat before we're done again. So this is just going to be a really long process.
We're going to try and be brief, but you guys know that's not our strong suit.
No. Kingdom of Ash. We have so many thoughts. Leighton, go.
I really want to start out by talking about Aelin's rescue, because this is the first point in the book where I was, like, fully invested. And prior to this, I had a very difficult time reading Aelin's chapters because they were just so sad.
She's miserable.
Yeah, and they're also some of the shortest chapters in this entire book. However, they were the hardest to get through for me.
Yeah.
However, at this point, we obviously know she's been captured by Maeve. She has the iron mask on. She's covered in iron chains. She has the iron gauntlets on. Pretty much, she's been going through both physical and mental torture for the last 2 months.
Yes.
She, at this point, is having a really difficult time determining what is real and what is fake, because they're also, every time they're physically hurting her, they are healing her. So then she has this aspect of, did that even happen? Did I imagine it? We know Maeve has mind powers as well, so she's also going into her mind. But something that I love during this time, the one, like, bright shining star, is her relationship with Fenris.
It's so good.
Their blinking code, it's so small, but these little details are seriously what make this book.
Oh, it's so good, and that's what makes it so emotional, too.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, it's, I think, like, 1 is yes, 2 is no, 3 is, are you okay? 4 is, this is real.
I'm here with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, there comes a day, I believe it's 2 months and 5 days in. And this is the day that Aelin decides she's had enough, which is a lot to say. for her. Because prior to this, the only time we've ever seen her, quote unquote, give up or snap is in Dovier.
Yeah, and I would also say in Heir of Fire when she like is like, and the light went out. Like she kind of is like, I'm done. But other than that, yeah.
I don't even remember when is that? Like
it's when she snaps when Emery shows the dagger from Yulwei.
Oh, yes, I do remember.
But yes, very minimal times has she like completely given up, and during that time she didn't want to die. She just was like,
I've had enough. Yeah. But at this point, she's set out. She's going to die.
Yeah.
She's gonna convince Karen, is what I call him. Sue me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
But to kill her.
Yeah.
So she starts making fun of him, like poking at him, pushing his buttons, and he gets sufficiently pissed.
Mm-hmm.
Starts like beating up on her. Essentially decides that he lays her on this metal table and he's gonna heat it up. So it melts her body to the table, and she has this iron mask on, so it's going to melt her face as well. And she's essentially going to melt and burn to death, which is kind of crazy because her her power is wildfire.
That part, that's like her breaking point where she was like, no, anything but this. Like, she's like, I do not want to be tortured and like basically like hate fire. She was like, that was like her breaking point.
Well, we saw in Heir of Fire, she had such a hard time gaining control because she was so afraid of her magic. So to revert back to that is terrible.
Yes.
However, Rowan is waiting for a signal. He hears a voice from Mala.
Yes, Mala.
I called it Malala earlier. Not right. Mala, pretty much saying, like, balls to the walls, you better get going. Your wifey is about to kick the can.
Yeah.
So get going. So he starts running. However, before he's able to get there, Fenris catches on to what she's doing.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, oh my gosh, there's only one thing I can do. And you know what he does? He severs the Bloodo with Maeve, which in turn kills him slowly.
It's gonna kill him. But that gives her the opportunity to like decide, like, because Fenris didn't give up. I feel like that's her moment of like, wait, frick, now I can't give up either, and then she starts running.
Yeah, and in my head too, I didn't think she would run, but I think especially seeing Fenris like give up his life for her, he's like tells her run, and she automatically listens, which is very out of character for her, but like
yes, but I liked that part too because I always was like, I liked that she didn't get saved. Like, she really was ready to save her. At that point, she was running and she was like, I'm going to save myself. Mm-hmm. And then I liked that, like, you know, they didn't go in there and, like, carry her out or, like, treat her as, like, weak. Like, she carried herself. Like, she got out by herself. I was like, that's such an Aelin thing to do.
Yeah, well, it's so heartbreaking, too, because she's running. And the first person that she runs into is Lorcan.
Yeah.
Which, he's the one that literally betrayed her in Empire Storms. But, like,
yeah.
Runs into Lorcan. Lorcan's been sending his like magical signals out, so Gabriel comes, but we finally see Rowan, and Rowan is over her in his hawk form, and he makes like a squaw, whatever sound a hawk makes.
Squawk.
And like she makes like a like audible sound of like her heart breaking, and she's like, oh my gosh, he's here.
Yes.
And it just shows how much like obviously they're meant for each other, and everything like that, which was so sad. But then she goes with Lorcan, and Rowan and Gabriel turn around and get Fenris. And this part is so good because they find Fenris and Karen both like beat up, and Rowan takes Karen, puts him on the table, fillets him alive.
Yes.
Which, if we remember correctly, I don't remember what the context was, but she told him that she was gonna fillet him alive if he ever did something at the beginning.
Oh, yes.
And it comes full circle because maybe she didn't do it, but Rowan does it for her. And I think there's a point in time where she asks how he died. And he's like, well, I like, you know, cut him up. And she's like, good. That's what I told him was going to happen. But Aelin has her panic attack because she has the iron mask on and she cannot get it off, which is so heartbreaking.
Yes, it's so sad. The sound on TikTok that is to that, and it's like to a song. No, it's, you want to know what song it's to? It's the like,
oh no,
the rescue song that's like, I will send up darkness to find you.
Oh,
I will rescue. Yeah, that song. And then it's her screaming, like, get it, take it off, take it off, take it off. It is literally the most depressing sound on TikTok. Every time I see it, it makes me emotional.
Well, literally, it's so sad, too, because at this point, I think she's with Lorcan and Elide. And Elide's also having, like, her heart broken because she literally doesn't know what she can do for her at this point. And then Rowan's able to come back, and she's able to draw on the word marks with his blood in order to get the mask off. And then she immediately erupts into flames. Yeah. Because her magic has been suppressed.
No one look at me.
Yeah, which burns all of her clothes off, which then we see her back, and all of her scars are gone.
Which we will get to shortly.
Yes, we have beef with that. But then they say Fenris is gonna die. She's nonverbal at this point. She blinks once or twice, whichever the one is for no.
Yeah.
She walks over to him, engulfs him in his flames. He's still in his wolf form.
Yeah.
Feeds him her blood, makes him take the blood oath, says, I demand you live. And he lives, and then he bows in front of her, still in his wolf form.
It's so good. Fenris and Aylin's relationship truly is, like, definitely, like, trauma bonded, for sure. But also, like, I love platonic best friends, and that is truly what they are. And you start to see it, like, in Empire of Storms, like we talked about earlier. But Queen of Shadows, wow. Kingdom of Ash, it's different. And I don't know how to explain it, but I wish we could see even more of them. Like, I love their dynamics so much.
I know, and I know we talked about it earlier, how you were saying Sarah J. Maas potentially could be writing another book in the Throne of Glass universe. I personally would love to see some more information about the Cadre.
Yes!
Just because they hold such a near and dear place in my heart.
Yes. And they've also mentioned, too, like, there's moments where, like, Lorcan asks Rowan, like, does she know about Summerell or whatever the places, like, they talk about their adventures or, like, the cities that they've destroyed and things like that, and I'm like, I want to know more.
Yeah, except I hope if they do, hypothetically, I don't think she will, if she ever does write a book about the Cadre, I mean, I don't think I would want to hear about Rowan and Lyra.
Oh, I don't want to either.
Just because we've already had everything with Aelin that I would be like, this is a story that I don't need to know.
Yes.
But
anyways.
Yes, go on your scars rant.
Go. Okay, so we haven't really, like, flat out said it yet, but basically, we both don't really love Kingdom of Ash.
Yes.
Part of the reason, and the biggest reason why I don't really love Kingdom of Ash, is because I'm very protective over Aelin and her character. It's my favorite book character I've ever read. And there are two things that make Aelin Aelin. Her scars and her magic. Her scars, she has always loved, and they've always represented as, like, reminders. There's even a line where Irene says, in Assassin's Blade, she says, like, Selena says in her inner monologue, like, this woman wears her scars like women wear the finest jewels. Like, we know that, like, and she has her scars from Nehemia, her scars from Indovir, like, they make her her. And then her magic, she had to fight so freaking hard to, like, come to terms with it and accept it, and she finally does, and she finally gets to that point, and then what do we do in Kingdom of Ash? We take away her scars and her magic.
Yeah.
The two things that make her Aelin, but no, because it's fine, because we have love and family and all is well. No. This woman, you cannot tell me that this woman was okay in any part of this book.
No.
And it drives me crazy because we get to the end, and she's like, I have my kingdom and the coronation and whatever, and I'm like, you still just seem so not well.
Yeah, I would low-key be pissed if I were her because, like you said, she worked so hard for her magic and to get it under control. And then she literally doesn't really have it. I mean, I think the quote is at the end, they were saying, oh, it was once a wildfire and now it's dwindled to an ember.
Yeah, like it still like exists, barely. But it's so small. And I'm just like, I just don't understand. And that's why I don't like the book, is because I'm like, you're telling me that you took away all these things that made Aelin Aelin, and you're like, but it's fine because, you know, she has her friends and love and her kingdom, whatever. And I'm like, that to me is just not good enough. You can't build up this character to accept these things about her for 7 books just to take it away and say, oh, it's fine. Like, no, it's not.
I agree. I think her scars told her really interesting story and everything that she's persevered and survived and made her who she was. And then they turn around and they say, oh yeah, everything that you've dealt with and you survived in Dovir, Nehemia, all those promises you've made, the promise you made to Darrow, so on and so forth. Yeah, null and void. We don't care.
No, and also, like, realistically speaking, like, it would make sense. It makes sense for her to not be okay in Kingdom of Ash. I think if she, like, came back from basically being tortured for 2 months and, like, back to, like, her swaggering self, that it wouldn't make sense. Like, the way that it went, like, is, like, what I would expect something to happen. Like, what it would be like for you to go through something like that. But at the same time, just by the end of the book, you want to see her healed. Like, if this book series has been about her this entire time, I want to see her get to the end of the book and be completely healed or, like, okay. And I feel like we get to the end of the book and it's like, I'm going day by day. And it's like, okay.
You're like not good enough.
Not good enough as the reader. I've been invested in your story this whole time and you're telling me that, like, it's okay. Then you're like, no, it's not. You obviously are not okay. And your character never really got that, like, full, like, relaxed, happy feeling. I don't know. I don't like it. I don't like that they took both of those things away. Sarah J. Maas has a tendency to take away power from the women because it pisses me off.
Yeah, I've noticed it's amongst all fantasy novels, I think, as a whole, there's a trend that it always happens with the women and not with the men.
It's annoying.
You're like, why are we doing that?
It's so annoying. Anyways, that's part of, like, the main reason why I hate that book. And also because Adian's chapters are literally the most insufferable things.
He is the worst.
I have to read.
And granted, I believe we touched on this before. He has a reason to be upset after the whole, plan was concocted without him.
Yeah.
So yes, be upset, but there's literally a point where Cassandra. Who the heck is Cassandra? Lysandra comes in. She is just shifted from some sort of animal, so she's naked.
Yeah.
And she goes into, like, their tent that they're sharing together, and all she has is, like, a cloak, and she's barefoot and everything. And you know what Adian does? Kicks her out into the snow.
Literally,
and says,
the
like,
most cruel
I can't
thing.
deal with you. Excuse me, act like a grown adult and be like, yes, I'm pissed at you. We need to have this discussion. I'm not ready to be over it, but why would I be so rude?
And then she goes back to him. I just don't understand.
Yeah. Was not vibing with Adian pretty much this whole book. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about very briefly is just Elaid's and Lorcan's relationship.
Oh, yes.
Because I absolutely adore it, and specifically because we know Lorcan betrays Aelin at the end of Empire Storms, and that's the reason Maeve shows up. And Elaid is so connected with Aelin, she's not forgiven him for this.
Yeah.
He has groveled, he has tried. He literally, his form of groveling is like, I will kill anybody you want.
Yes.
And you're like,
rips up his t-shirt for her period.
Yeah, donating to the period cause. I'm like, okay, this man, he's 500 years old and he doesn't understand what flirting is, but the thought is there.
Yes.
However, it kind of comes to a head when they're fighting in Aniel, and she gets fed up with him to the point where she's like, you go into battle and guess what? I don't care if you return.
Yeah.
Essentially saying, like, if you die, that's fine by me, which, spoiler alert, that's not fine by her.
Yes.
Because there's a point where there's the really big dam and the dam's going to break and it's going to drown everybody in Aniel.
And he's hurt.
And so they realize that he's not there and he's going to die. So you know what she does? She hops on Kale's demon horse thing and darts out the gate, goes, picks him up, puts him on the horse.
Yes.
It's slowing them down incredibly. He tries to, like, jump off the horse so she can make it. And he's like, he tries to jump off. And I swear I wrote the quote down. But essentially, he gives his love confession during that time. And she essentially gives him the middle finger and is like, F you, you're staying on here, we're both living.
Yeah.
And
stop saying goodbye.
Yeah, and then they both do. But something that I thought that was really interesting about this is how was she able to ride the demon horse so easily? And you find out Lorcan is protected by the god of death.
Oh, yeah.
Which makes it so she can easily hop on the demon horse.
Wait, that's so funny.
I never thought of that. I was always like, interesting, but then didn't really think any more about that.
Yeah.
But then, obviously, they're good at this point. And then we get to chapter 87. Chapter 87. One of my favorites and my least favorites at the same time, because this is their first kiss. And I ship them so hard. So I was so ready. I was like, yes, this is the moment. We've had Empire Storms. We know Sarah J. Maas can write smut. We know she can do it well. We had like 7 pages of the beach scene. And you know what? You know what happens? They kiss. And then she says, quote, "Show me everything." And he quotes, or I guess she quotes, "So Lorcan did."
What did Lorcan do?
Fade to black. Are you kidding me? I know she's capable of giving us more. So
I think it's so funny.
You're giving me a fade to black scene after she just saved his life?
Rude.
Rage. And then the other hilarious part is obviously at the very, very end of the book, they get married, right?
Yeah.
And she becomes Lady of Penrath.
Parith?
Wait,
I can't remember.
I can't remember what it's called. And he becomes
Lorcan Lockin.
Yeah, Lord Lorcan Lockin. Lord Lorcan Lockin. Are you kidding me? I am convinced
Lord.
SJM didn't know this relationship was going to happen until she was significantly into the books.
Wait, can you try and say it 3 times fast?
Lord Lorcan Lockin, Lord Lorcan Lockin, Lord Lorcan Lockin. Wait, I kind of killed that.
Wait, I got Lord Lorcan. Wait, Lord Lock. Wait, Lord Lorcan Lockin, Lord Lorcan. Wait, I can't do it.
But I'm like, there's no way she gave Elaine that last name and then
knowing that
had
they were
this
end
in mind
together.
But then she makes fun of herself because the people in the book make fun of him.
That's so true.
Name.
And he's like, I don't care.
Yeah, and then he also, side note, ties his life to hers. So when she dies, he'll die too, which is a big deal because he's like 500 years old.
Not even that he'll die when she died. Like he'll age with her. Like he basically tied his life to her. So yeah, so if she ages, he'll age. Like they'll do life together.
So they could grow old together.
They are, but unless she is immortal, and we don't know that yet.
Damage.
Because she's half witch.
The plot twists keep coming even after I finish the book.
There's still so many questions unanswered about this book. Yeah, no, I love their relationship. I mean, it wasn't a relationship that I was like overly like crazy about, but it's definitely, I love them better than like Adian and Lysandra and stuff like that. Anyways.
Yeah, I really enjoyed their entire side quest. It was so out of pocket, but like her becoming a fortune teller and him getting all oiled up and throwing swords and then pretending to be married. I'm like,
so funny.
I feel like this is actually not contributing to the plot very much. However, I am eating this up.
It's just like the grumpy old guy, and he just keeps getting like stuck in absurd places, and he's just, anyways, I think it's hilarious.
Love it.
Anyways, what's your next point? I feel like a lot of the points that we kind of already went over, I just had like bounced off ideas, so you can keep going.
Yes. This is moving on. I have come to love Dorian so much. And I mentioned it earlier in our Throne of Glass Part 1 podcast, where I didn't really understand the Dorian hype until this reread. And now I'm like obsessed, and I see how debilitating this is for the Dorian stans.
Yes.
I get it. But one of my favorite Dorian moments happens in Kingdom of Ash. This moment, and then my second favorite is him shattering the glass castle. And this is when he sneaks into Morath. Maeve finds out. He's like scurrying about as a little mouse.
Something like that.
And Maeve's like, you're not a very good spy. Like, come on. But then he puts on the Dorian charm and he's like, oh, you know what? We could get married and then you would have a kingdom to rule. And for some reason, she's like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea.
Fooled.
Yeah, which I think they were both trying to essentially trick each other, so they were both pretending like they had kind of come to an agreement, but essentially they needed to find the third word key, and so that's what they were going to do. But then they find it, right, and Maeve tries to pull a 180, Uno reverse card, and it's like, ha, got into your mind, you're going to be my slave, and then he spits some bars, and is like, I will be a slave never again. I've been studying your magic this entire time.
Yeah.
And then invades her mind. And he's like, oh, you thought when I was a mouse, I was just, wandering about? He says, oh, quote, you didn't think I spent all those hours merely searching, did you? No, he was infusing the ground with his magic so it would crumple Morath. I was like, okay, bars.
Oh
and then he invades
I forgot about all of
her
this.
mind.
Yeah.
Maeve, the Valk, who's
Yes.
bajillion years old, and then spits the bar, quote, and there'll only be one witch who will be my queen.
I love that part so much.
And then casually severs her ability to world walk, which we know Maeve is obviously Valg and has been a world walker and convinced people she's one of the three sisters. And so this is like very integral to her integral, whatever.
Yes.
To her character arc. And then says, quote, world walker no longer. I suggest you get a good pair of shoes. And then turns into a wyvern and flies. Wyvern and flies away.
Okay, I think this ties into your next point too. Is something that I love about Dorian, but I feel kind of bad is that I feel like this man is underestimated at every single turn. Like, I feel like everyone is like, oh, he's just like, you know, the poor little prince that like is now the king and doesn't really know what he's doing and like is kind of like, you know what I mean? Like I feel like people underestimate him so much. Literally, even Maeve does. Like Maeve literally does not see it coming. And I feel like in a way, though Aelin obviously loves him, I feel like she also underestimates him because she's like, no, you have like I have to be the one to sacrifice myself because like it can't be you. You're just cute little like you're just, you know, little Dorian and like you have so much to offer. Like I don't know, I feel like she like almost like talks down to him sometimes and like people just underestimate him all the time.
I agree. And arguably, I mean, I would like to think he's probably one of the most powerful people in this book, even probably more so than Aelin. Right?
I just think he's untrained, and now I would say he's way more powerful than Aelin because she lost her powers. Like,
and he is the raw magic that we talked about.
He is literally capable of anything.
Yeah,
and yet somehow we underestimate this man. I don't know.
Yeah, like casually when he earlier in Empire of Storms, I think it was. When he's like, I think I could become a shapeshifter. Yeah. I wonder how people do that. And I love it. Him and Manon get in an argument about him going to Morath.
Oh, yeah.
And she's like, you're not going. You can't do it. Once again, Manon almost underestimates him, too. Yeah. And she's like, you have to show me you know how to shift before you can go. And they're in this argument. And the way she ends the argument is she looks at him and goes, your eyes are brown. And then storms out because his eyes are obviously blue normally, and that's like the smallest shift. And then the next line is like, my eyes were brown for the next week because I couldn't figure out how to turn them back.
Anyways, I just think that he's just so underestimated, and then we see that play out with this scene with Aelin and his dad. Oh. Which did you want to touch on?
Oh my gosh. Yes. I have another point I want to circle back to, but yes, let's move on to forging the lock.
Okay, well, first off, I know what you're about to say, but I will say that, and we talked about it earlier, like him the king being named, all of that, like this plot point, crazy to me. Like like I said, I loved this part. Yeah. Continue.
I adored that part, and I thought the scripting was so good and the writing because I didn't realize personally I'd never even known his name. However, they obviously hold hands. They stand in their circle of word marks, whatever. They go to forge the lock, and they go to like what they describe, quote unquote, as like a dream state. They're outside of their bodies. Where they're located exactly, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
However, randomly, Dorian's dad's here. I'm like, that's oddly convenient that you're just chilling around and you're right here. And then he says, oh, I can step in for Dorian because I'm obviously related to him. He has the same bloodline that they need. And I'm nameless. And it just so happens that I have just the right amount of magic to forge this lock.
No. Originally, it was that he was going to join the three of them so that none of them had to die. That was what it was. That's what he says, is I will join you so then then you guys don't die, essentially, and I will sacrifice myself. And then Aelin pushes Dorian out of the circle anyways, and I'm like,
stop.
Literally, the problem was solved.
I'm like, I remember, I must have gotten that part wrong, but I remember she like donkey kicks him out of the circle, And I'm like, why are we doing this?
Literally, the problem was solved. The king being there was like, great, I'm going to help the two of you, and I will sacrifice myself, go to the other, like, basically disperse into nothing, but so that both of you guys can live and have your magic. No.
Yeah. And it frustrates me even more. I talked about it before where she's just turning into everything she hated about Nehemia with her being the martyr and everything. But let me find the... Oh, she's one of the most selfless and selfish people I've ever met in my entire life because she had a solution that nobody had to die for. And, like, yes, she's selfless because she's willing to die for the cause, but now she has, like, a mate she has to think about. And she's not giving a flying flip about Rowan right now.
She's like, sorry,
she's like, he'll deal with it. I'm like, no. I mean, based on the SJM universe as a whole, but, like, mates, when you lose a mate, it's, like, debilitating.
Yeah.
You do not go on. You do not get better. And you essentially just suffer it interminably.
Yeah.
So I'm like, that's incredibly selfish for you to kick Dorian out of the circle. Yes, it came from somewhere selfless by wanting to save Dorian, but it frustrates me just so much in that whole situation. But then, correct me if I'm wrong, because this scene makes me so upset that, like, I could be getting some of the facts wrong.
Okay.
Just for the sake of my own bias.
Yes.
But, she essentially forges the lock, and she's supposed to die, right?
Yeah.
But, Mala gives her, like, a little seed of her power, and then Rowan, when he redid her tattoo on the back, or her back, it's in word marks that are supposed to guide her home.
Yeah.
Or something along those lines.
Something like that.
Which...
Light the way, something like that.
Yeah. By the way, somebody with a back tattoo of word marks. You know, that sounds familiar. Anyways, and so then she's able to find her way home.
Yeah.
However...
Falls through all the worlds.
To me, I'm like, wow, this is all really convenient. Whatever. However, the one part I do really love about this is you find out she's supposed to open the archway for the gods and fulfill Elena's original deal she was supposed to have.
Yeah.
And she offers the gods a bargain, pretty much saying, we talked about how Elena can never be with Gavin.
Yeah, because basically she was going to, like, disperse into nothing, essentially.
Yeah, and she's like, let Elena be happy and go with Gavin, and I'll let you through this archway.
Yeah.
And they say, no. And they disintegrate Elena right there on the spot.
Oh my gosh, I literally forgot about this part. Literally, so frustrating.
Yeah, I'm like, oh my gosh. But then her Selena shows a little bit and she says, please go through this archway. And then she opens a hell portal on their side of the archway, lets everything through, seals the gate, and says goodbye.
I forgot about this.
I'm like, oh my gosh.
Love it.
It's so petty. And I love it. I
love to see that little spark. That's what I felt like this book was it was her being really miserable and frustrated and sad with, like, her situation. But she has little sparks throughout the book where you see that, like, joy again. And that is one of them. And then the moment after when she starts falling through the world and she's like, I'm going home, home, whatever. And, like, that's, like, the other moment, too, where I see that joy. And I'm like, there she is. That's my girl.
Yeah, which I'm not sure if you wanted to touch on it yet, but her falling through the worlds, we obviously see a lot of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Going
yes,
through.
I do want to touch on it. So, in the book, she falls through worlds, and obviously there's so much we don't know about the SJM universe and things like that, but she says when she's falling through the worlds that she sees a city with the tallest buildings, things like that, and so I always have assumed that it was Crescent City. And then she talks about how she saw two couples, or not two couples, sorry. She sees a couple, and they, like, push her away, like, to, like, guide her, like, or something like that. And the way that she describes them is, you know that it is Feyre and Rhysand.
Yes.
So, obviously, this opens up this idea of, like, these worlds are intertwined with one another. And then she gets back to her world. But this is where I had a question that I wanted to ask you. This is a different question than what we talked about earlier, but so everyone had always theorized that the Throne of Glass world happens at the same exact time as the other SJM
I was
books.
just thinking about this because this was hurting my brain.
Yes. So that's what people were like, oh, they happen at the same time then because she fell through the worlds and she saw Rhysand and Feyre, things like that. But based off of some of the other things that have happened in the books, et cetera, that we will touch on later, and just things like that, do you think that Throne of Glass is in the same timeline, or do you think that it's different?
Like, it's completely different, right? Because in my head, I guess at this point in time when I was reading Throne of Glass, I didn't really have a good grasp of where ACOTAR and Crescent City were happening.
Yeah.
But I always thought those two happened at the same time.
Yeah.
And then I thought Throne of Glass was 15,000 years earlier.
Yeah, I think that it's before. But when I first read Throne of Glass, I thought that they were at the same time too. And now that I've read more, now I'm like, wait.
So how does she see Feyre and Rhysand?
Well, that's what I don't know.
Because
actually, there's a thing that we learn in Silver Flames that we'll touch on later.
Mm-hmm.
But that could maybe explain it. But
I've never thought about that because I've never really took a deep look at the timelines, but they don't happen at the same time. They're very far apart.
No, they have to be apart.
Yeah.
Which makes me sad, but like, yeah. Anyways, that part I love, and like I said, that's like the part where like you see that joy, and then it also opens up this whole plot point, and this oyster of literally anything you could do. The thing that pisses me off is that she falls to these worlds, she gets back. The expectation was that she was gonna close the word gate, and it was gonna take Maeve and Erwin with them. No. Oh no, that was the bargain that she tries to get with the gods. She's like, just take them.
Yeah, she says, if you help Elena, I'll deal with Erewhon and everything like that by myself.
Oh, yes. Instead, because she was originally supposed to go up there, talk to the gods, and be like, take them
with you.
Take them with you, yeah. And instead, she gives the bargain to try and save Elena, and they say no, and they close off the gate, be like, you gotta deal with it on your own. So the gate is now closed, and the problem wasn't solved.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, so all you've really done is just cut off your communication with the gods, and that is it.
And now she has to fight Erewhon and Maeve, and she has an ember of magic.
Yes. And you're like, okay, that was really pointless at that point to do all of that and get your magic taken when at the end of the day, they didn't even end up taking him with them.
Yeah. Which,
I was so annoyed.
Then moving to the ending, I know we touched base on the fact that Irene is the one that kills Erewhon because she actually does like a trickery scheme with Dorian where Dorian shapeshifts into Irene.
Oh, yeah.
And Erewhon thinks that Dorian Irene is the real Irene, but Irene ends up killing him.
Yeah.
Which I was like, once again, to me felt random. I'm like, okay, but whatever. Then I want to talk about Maeve because Maeve also dies in this battle. But it essentially is Aelin and Rowan are distracting Maeve from the front. And then Aelin communicates with Fenris via their blinking code.
I love that so much.
Apparently their blinking code got complex as shiz because she somehow communicated sneak around the back and stab her in the heart. Didn't know there was a blink for that, but whatever. But he sneaks around, stabs her in the heart, which, first things first, what an odd choice.
Yeah.
Because, yes, I mean, we didn't talk about this, but obviously he's in the Blood Oath. He's been in the Blood Oath for a long time. But the reason he was in the Blood Oath originally is because his twin brother, Connell, enjoyed or kind of got tangled up, I don't know, with serving Maeve and was like her sexual consort, whatever you want to call it, of sorts. And he hated that. So he said, I'm going to do it because we're twins. We look the same. It shouldn't be that different.
Yeah.
Steps in. And then later in the book, Connell is demanded or ordered by Maeve to kill Fenris. And he ends up stabbing himself in the heart.
Yes.
Which we're assuming means he fought the Blood Oath and he killed himself.
Yeah.
So yes, he has adequate reasons to be upset at Maeve. But I think everyone does, and objectively, I don't think he has the most out of everybody necessarily. So when they said, oh, we're going to have Fenris be the one to kill Maeve, I wonder how Sarah J. Maas decided.
All right. We are starting filming again for the 5,000th time tonight because this episode has been very long.
Yeah, I think we started this episode at, 7?
It's currently 11.
Yeah, 6:30, something like that.
Oh my gosh.
But we're dedicated to the cause.
We are dedicated to the cause, and we have only a couple more thoughts, so.
Yes, I literally only have one more thought, and I think it could be a great thing to end on because it's quite literally my favorite scene in the entire Throne of Glass series, which is the 13.
Oh.
Yes, very tragic. However, I think this is some of Sarah J. Maas's best writing. I don't cry in books, I would like to say, most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Except for when I got to this part, I was sobbing like a little child.
You want something so sad?
What?
The first time I read it, I didn't cry because I was just, like, speed reading, trying to get to the end to know what happened. That, like, I didn't, like, give myself time to let it, like, sink in.
Mm-hmm.
So sad.
No, listening to the audio of this, like, kind of like you said, Alaid's and Aylin's reunion, when you listen to the audio, is just heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Or when you said the Iron Mask, Aylin taking it off.
Yeah.
I think I said the audio.
Yes, you did.
Alaid. But the audio of this, truly, it makes you like soak it in, and it just withers your soul away.
I've heard it on TikTok, and every time I hear it on TikTok too, it's another one where I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, but essentially, Manon is just injured at this time because she just had her battle with Iskra or whatever.
And can't Abraxas not fly?
Yeah, Abraxas can't fly. He's injured. And just the cherry on top is Astrid flies over to her and just sucker punches her in the gut. And it's like, I know you can't fly already because Axbros is injured, but now you can't walk.
I'm really going to make sure that you cannot move.
Yeah, and then all the 13 go, and they fly out, and in this big circle, they all make the yielding at once, destroying all the witch towers, and they all forge the opening for Astrid to go directly to the Blackbeak matron, which we know is Manon's grandmother, who is the one that stamped her with unclean when she found out she was pregnant. And she goes in, she body slams the matron and makes the yielding, essentially sacrificing them both at the same freaking time.
Yes.
Which, personally, at first, I was thinking, this is a terrible way to end Astrid's story. I started to really like Astrid.
Yeah.
So knowing that she died, I was like, that's awful. I was ready for her to, like, overcome her battles and then go on and live a happy life. But the more that I thought about it, I was like, I think this is the best thing that could have been done for her story.
No, and honestly, I wish I could have known more about the other 13 because I was like, wow, they died and that was it. Like, the found family was gone. And I was like, wow, I really wish I could have more. But Astrid, I was like, yeah, I feel like her story, her dying in that way, I feel like was honestly perfect.
Yeah, it felt very justified. But something that I noticed this time when I was reading it, it's already heartbreaking.
Yeah.
I mean, Manon, that's her family, essentially.
Yeah.
Her mom and dad were murdered by her grandma. Her grandma's a witch, and now she's, well, quite literally, she's a witch, but she's also evil.
Yes.
And she's dead now, and so she literally has no family.
Yeah.
The 13 is all gone. She has Axbros, and she has Alaid, essentially, is kind of the only person that she's close to. And Dorian at this point. But what I didn't realize is they mentioned in passing that Axbros, his name is getting worse every time I say
the names are getting quite bad right now.
Yeah, it's 11 p.m. I just can't at this point.
Also, I don't mean to correct you, but it's Alaid.
What did I say?
You keep saying
Alaid?
Alaid, yeah, something like that.
I hope everybody knows what I mean. When I was watching those recaps, she called her Elodie.
Oh.
And I was like, okay, I'm glad at least we're all on the same page. That's hard to pronounce.
Yeah. Anyways, continue. Sorry.
But what they mentioned in passing is Abraxas. He has a mate, the Wyvern.
Yeah.
And it's Astrid's.
Oh, that's
Wyvern,
right.
and all the Wyverns die.
Yeah.
When the 13 dies. So Abraxas also loses his mate when Manon loses her family.
Yeah.
And we talked about how we don't know much about the mating bond between Fae.
Yeah.
Within the universe, we definitely don't know the mating bond between
other
Wyverns.
Creatures.
But having read Fourth Wing recently and knowing how that works, I just imagine it. I mean, in Fourth Wing, it's what do you call that? They die.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah.
And at this, we know they don't die, but I picture it as so debilitating that not only is Manon heartbroken, but Abraxas can't go on either.
Yes.
I'm like,
I literally think it is so heartbreaking. And again, like I've said, if there were any people that I feel like still have so many unanswered questions and still have so much to like learn, it's Dorian and Manon and Abraxas, like them. Like there's just so many unanswered questions I still have. And also like, and with Dorian too, it's like there's just so much of his power that we haven't seen. There's so much about Manon and Abraxas's like healing journey that I want to see. I don't know. I just feel like it was so incomplete with them.
And we know Abraxas is kind of the diamond in the rough in the sense that he's the one that's different from all the other wyverns. But we find out at the end of the book, I think they barely mention this, but they actually find a bunch of wyvern eggs. And then they have Sartik and the Ruck Riders are going to raise the wyverns because they obviously have trained their rucks to be super, you know, been tamed and everything like that. And they're going to raise them so then there's more wyverns like Abraxas.
That would literally be amazing.
I know. I was like, wow, that's kind of a cute way. But however, the 13 was like the first time in this entire Throne of Glass series that like my heart was truly broken to the point where I was sobbing.
Yeah.
I did tear up a little bit. I have a cry counter on my notes. I did tear up a little bit on Aylin's rescue.
Yeah.
However, those are the 2 points in the whole series that got to me.
Yeah. Also, this is a super random because I didn't catch on to this, so I don't know how. I need to pay attention in my rereads maybe. But so something that I thought was really interesting is throughout the entire Throne of Glass series, mirrors are mentioned multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
Those witch towers that they go and destroy through the yielding were made out of mirrors.
Yes.
Baba Yellowlegs in her like trailer used mirrors, and she makes a couple comments about it, and I would have to go look back at my notes, and I can't right now, but she makes comments about how the mirrors are like portals to other things or memories or the past and future. I don't know, portals to something. And then we also see that the lock that Manon and the like lock thing or whatever, it's not a lock, it was a mirror. Like that Manon and Aylin end up in. Is that what happened?
Oh, like the witch glass?
Maybe?
Thing?
I don't remember. There was a mirror brought in at other times. Anyways, besides the point. I think that there might be something about mirrors or like things like that have to do with like world walking or like portaling into other worlds.
Yeah.
Because someone said on TikTok, which again, I didn't see this, I didn't catch on, but someone said that there is a name, and I don't even remember what series it's in, if it's in Crescent City or if it's in Akatar, where one of the characters has the same name as one of the 13. And I don't know who it is, and I have to find the video. I don't freaking know. I should have looked it up beforehand. But apparently, someone was like, the names were like the same name was used again, and it was one of the 13 in one of the other worlds. And obviously, we just saw that like they could fall through, like Aylin just fell through worlds.
So you're
and, like,
suggesting one of the 13 world walked into one of the other SJM
saying that they all went into the yielding into the witch's
mirrors.
tower, which is a mirror.
So what if they're all alive?
What if they're all alive? They just all were scattered into other worlds. That was
Shut
my
the front
thought.
freaking door.
Because someone was like, they use the same name in SJM in her writing, and also outside of like in interviews has said like there is importance in names. We literally see that in the book. Like she makes that as a quote, and then also like she said it in interviews and stuff. Like there is significance in names, and like there's no like. Anyways, I just thought it was super weird, and I would have to look and find the name now, and I'm gonna pay attention when I do a reread, but because I don't even know what world it's in. But yeah, because they run into a mirror, and the mirrors were like signified a lot of like portals and stuff. So
wait, you're kind of blowing my mind right now. But now that I think about it, what in Akatar? What's the name of the bird?
The bird.
I don't want to give it away.
Vasa.
Dang it.
No, it wasn't her. Like,
why did I think it was Vesta?
Like it was like something like super brief. Like I'm pretty sure it was like
passing.
Yeah, like either it was like one of the like acolytes like in the library or like in Crescent City. Like it was something that was like super briefly mentioned. Like you had to been looking for it. And I just wasn't like attached to the witches when I read the other book, so I didn't really catch on to it.
And I can only name it's so sad, but maybe like 5.
Yeah, exactly.
Out of the 13.
So now when I reread it, I'll be looking for it, so hopefully I'll find it. But yeah. Anyways, that's just like a canon theory right there. Now, Astrid
Yeah.
would be dead because she didn't yield into the mirror. She
Into the
yielded
mirrors.
into.
Okay, but what if how we're talking about how Sarah J. Maas might write another Throne of Glass universe book, and we want it to be about Dorian and Manon? What if she's reunited with the rest of the 13 because they're world walking?
I don't know.
I mean, that's really far out there.
Yes. But also, I have another theory, though, that I have to tell you. Sorry. Wow, this episode is getting so long. Okay. We all know that there is a nice little character that pops back in Kingdom of Ash that we met in Throne of Glass, Nox.
Nox Owen.
Okay, listen. So, we all know that I've done a lot of research for the book that I was writing. Okay?
Yes.
And something sparked my interest. So Nox, we see in Kingdom of Ash, is like a messenger, and he is like he is basically like bringing all the messages to people. Anyways, but he never shows up again. Like, he disappears after a while. He never sees Aelin again. Like, he never like rejoins like the whole person. Like, he just kind of disappears. We don't know where he goes.
Yeah.
I had this thought. Was that one of the gods that is like very prominent in Greek mythology is Hermes, who is the god of messengers. Yes.
Yeah.
I thought, what if Nox isn't just a messenger of, like, that situation, but what if he was a messenger for the gods? And so, when the gods left, he left too. And he has actually been traveling amongst worlds, like, as a messenger for other worlds and the gods and things like that. And so, because he disappears we don't see him after the gates are closed.
Yeah, because he's serving Darrow, I think, right, in Terrasen during the time.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he's only there for a brief moment. I wonder if, with this theory in mind, if you reread Throne of Glass, there was something that gives away that he's actually aware of kind of the word marks and the gates and everything.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I never caught on to anything, but I mean, it would make sense why he befriends her. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, like, I also think that it was true. Like, it was a pure friendship. But anyways, I just think that that's really interesting that, like, he kind of disappears after the gates are closed.
Yeah.
And also, everyone makes a joke on TikTok, too, of, like, where's Vaughn? Because Vaughn also, like, where is he?
Yeah.
And I'm like, what if he kind of plays kind of a similar role, too? But Nox made sense to me, and I was like, what if he's been traveling amongst worlds as a messenger for the gods?
Oh my gosh, I would love that because he was one of my favorites in Throne of Glass, so I was so sad when he left.
And he never got to see Aelin again.
Yeah, and then he randomly popped up in Kingdom of Ash, and I was ready for the full reunion, and then he was barely there.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, fine.
Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to go on my theories tangent.
No,
but
I'm obsessed.
Anyways, that's my thought. Anyways, do you have anything else? Oh, I had a question, but did you have any other thoughts?
No.
Okay.
I think we need to end this episode soon.
So fast.
Yes.
My last question is, we see in throughout the entire series that Aelin makes a comment when she met Irene that she felt like there was like a golden thread like pulling her to help Irene or whatever, and she makes the same comment about Manon and Queen of Shadows, and she talks about how this like bond essentially was like, or like push was like pushing her to build these connections or do something.
Yeah.
And it all ended up connecting and playing out in the end in Kingdom of Ash, and it all worked out. What do you think that like push or bond or whatever was? Do you think it was the gods? Do you think it was like some sort of like part of the prophecy? Like, what do you think that was?
The only thing that I can think about is we know Aelin has a lot of titles, right? She's Selena, she's Aelin, she's Alentia, she's Heir of Fire, she's all of it. But another one that is closely tied to her is the Queen Who Is Promised.
Yeah.
Right? Because she essentially is the one that inherited this prophecy. And I mean, not that I like the chosen one trope, but she's essentially the chosen one.
Yeah, she is.
Right? And destiny and fate have a heavy hand a lot of the times in the chosen one trope. So I wonder if it's almost the prophecy itself trying to make sure that it's fulfilled.
Yeah.
And almost nudging her in the correct directions that's going to end up fulfilling the prophecy. But then again, kind of the prophecy is the gods because they're the ones that are requiring that this is...
Yeah, and they're kind of nudging and creating it.
Yeah, they're requiring the price be paid.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, and honestly, I don't know the answer either. Maybe we'll talk about it later because there's some things we learn in one of the other books that I think might tie into it. But I'm thinking that it might be the, like... We talked about it in the first episode of this series of, like, Word being kind of, like, this, like, natural, like, basically space between the worlds. Like, and I feel like it might be that. But I don't know. Anyways,
almost like a third party type.
Yeah. But we learned that word might be something else
Yeah.
later in books. Anyways, I don't know the answer, but I just thought it would be curious to ask. Anyways,
so interesting.
I think it would be important to note, now that we're done, Throne of Glass is my favorite series of SJM.
Mm-hmm.
If you all couldn't tell, is it your favorite?
Oh, absolutely. And anybody who has read the series and maybe hasn't picked it up in a while, I encourage you to reread it again. I try and reread it every single year, and truly, it gets better every single time.
Yeah.
You find more and more kernels, and something that we talked about a long time ago in one of our episodes, our 5 stars episode, is what makes a 5-star series is the ability to reread and enjoy it more.
Yes.
And if I could recommend a series to reread over and over again, it would be Throne of Glass.
Yes. I think it's just crazy how attached and how much I love these characters. Like, I just think it's like, I don't know. If an author can make you fall in love with fake people the way that I love these characters and I love these books, like, I feel like you've accomplished something so great. Like, that's all I want to do is, like, if I were to write a book, you know? So it's so special to me. I don't know. I love the book series. Yep. Obviously, if you all couldn't tell. So, any other thoughts?
No. Yeah, Throne of Glass, I think, for both of us, truly has a special place in our heart. And it'll always be one of my favorite series. I think Aelin is one of my favorite characters, if not my favorite character of all time.
Same.
So.
Okay, wow. This episode was so long. So if you are still here with us, thank you for enjoying and enduring that.
Forging ahead.
Yes, forging ahead. Thank you guys so much for listening. Next week we will be doing our first episode of ACOTAR. It'll be part 1. We will be discussing all of the ACOTAR books, but we will, like, there'll be spoilers for the entire series, but we will be mostly focused on the first 3. A Court of, oh frick, I'm gonna screw it up. A Court of Thorns and Roses, A Court of Mist and Fury, and A Court of Wings and Ruin.
Yes.
So come prepared. We're super excited to jump into ACOTAR because there is a lot to uncover there. But
yeah, and as we do more series, it's really interesting because you'll see that all the series are interconnected even more so. Yeah. So will there be Throne of Glass spoilers potentially in the ACOTAR episodes?
Yes.
Okay.
Maybe. Probably. I would assume.
Just listen to this one first.
Yes. So, anyways, thank you guys so much for listening. Make sure you guys follow us on all of our social media pages. It's LA Reads Podcast. And we will see you all next week.
Bye. Holy cow. That is a lengthy episode.
Oh my god.